Hi, I'm Kelly from AMS, here with John from Akai. We are here to talk about the MPC X SE. So let's get straight into it. John, what are some of the key points that separate this from the original X?
Well, the most obvious, Kelly, is the new colorway. So to celebrate the 35th anniversary of Akai and MPCs, we went with the retro colorway. But what really is the most prominent features are the upgrades inside, right? So we've tripled the internal storage. So we went from 16 gigs to 48 gigs. You can also expand that with USB slots. There's an SD card slot up front. There's even a drive underneath that you can unscrew a faceplate and put an external hard drive in there as well. It also includes over 2,000 different drum programs and over 100 studio quality effects, things like reverbs, delays, compressors, through to more modern things like lo-fi and half-speed effects. It has the most amount of physical buttons out of any MPC. We have the 16 Q links with the lit up display that tells you what each parameter is being controlled, as well as extensive inputs and outputs, the most powerful MPC on the market.
Awesome. And how many synths are actually included in this?
So there are 25 with this one. This is the most extensive, and across those 25, there are 6,000 different presets.
Man, 6,000?
6,000. It'd be pretty hard to exhaust all of those.
Yeah, I bet.
You're not just stuck with those, though. You can edit each one and customize it and save it for recall later. So not that you would get through 6,000 presets, but if you feel like, I'm not the kind of person who wants stock sounds, you can manipulate every sound to your desire and save it for recall later as well.
Now, is the workflow any different from the other MPCs?
No, it's the same exact workflow.
Okay.
So it's the same operating system built in. I mean, these are essentially our studios in the shape of a drum machine, but there's an operating system in every one of them, and it's the same exact process. So the workflow is exactly the same.
Awesome. That makes it really easy to transfer the skill then.
Absolutely.
What are some of the more advanced features?
Some of the more advanced features that I like to point out, Kelly, are the ability to detect which key and scale your sample is in. Here, you literally can tap on a sample. You can come to the Edit Samples tab here on the screen, go to the Trim page, tab over one, and you see here, it tells you that that sample is in G sharp minor. Then you know if you want to play accompaniment to that, you're playing in the scale of G sharp minor. What's really cool is you can also lock the pads to play in that key and scale too. So when you load up one of those synthesizer sounds, you can set this with pad performance. So I can go here and go to pad performance there. And then I could say, okay, we're in G sharp minor. So I set the scale here. Right? And then I can either play notes, I can set it to play chords, or I can even set it to play chord progressions. So right out the bat, you're able to tell which key and scale your sample's in. Even if you know minimal to no music theory, you can instantly be playing along with your samples.
That's super helpful. If you wouldn't mind demoing, could you make a quick little composition for me?
Absolutely, absolutely. That's what I live for. So what I'll do is I'll probably make a trap composition if that's cool.
Yeah, cool.
I'll set the BPM here, type it in. I'm going to use the browse button to load sounds. So I'm in trap kits here, and there are 2,000 of these kits listed alphabetically. So let's just find something here. We're just loading sounds into our program slots. We're recording those sounds to tracks above. Once we have multiple recorded tracks, we then have a sequence. So I'll use these. I could try to, but I like to make it as easy on myself as possible. So I'm just going to record one sound at a time and then continue to overdub some of these sounds. So I'll use the record and play start. Switch tracks here, or I can switch tracks with the Q link here. And then I'll overdub another sound here. Move to another track. This time, go with some kicks.
And can you quantize as you go?
I do have quantize on here. So if you see here, I have time correct, right? I can either turn it on or off. I can tell it which type of quantization do I want to do. And I can also do it here on the fly with a Q-Link knob, and I can scroll through them. So you'll see me doing that with the different sounds. So now I've got kicks and snares. Maybe I'll add some hi-hats, cymbals, and percussive sounds. Step up another track here, and I'm gonna do some hi-hat rolls. Instead of trying to play them like this though, I'm gonna utilize note repeat. I'm gonna double tap it to latch it, right? I can change it on screen. I can change it here with the knob as well. And I'm gonna add some of these in. Turn off note repeat. Maybe we'll add some of these bells in here.
And is it sensing velocity as well?
It is. So they're velocity sensitive. If you're using the synth sounds, they're also polyphonic aftertouch on the pads as well. And you have the RGB backlit to tell you, typically kicks are red, snares are yellow, hi-hats are orange. So you kind of have things color coded as well. So melody sounds are usually lit up purple. So I'll add some of these over the top of this drum beat, and then I'll start to add some synthesizer sounds. Now to add the synth sounds, I have to go from this drum icon to this plugin instrument icon. It changes the program section at the bottom. I hit sounds here to bring up the different synthesizers. I'm going to select Fabric XL. We'll go with some sub bass here, add some 808s. Move on to track 9 here. I'm going to hit this plus symbol to add another plugin sound. Hit sounds here. Let's maybe add Mellotron here. Some choirs. Go with a lo-fi choir. And this time I'm going to set it to chords so that I can play chords here. And we'll add one more track and we'll call it a day for the basic loop. So I'll hit the plus symbol here again, go into sounds. Maybe I'll open up some stage pianos and we'll throw one here. And then I'm just going to turn chords off so that I'm playing notes. So now this is the basic loop, right? We don't want this to play for the entire composition. We want to change it up over time. And if I wanted to edit anything, I could come into this grid page here. I can see all the notes that I recorded in. I can move them around, transpose those. Actually, I'm going to do that with the bass. I felt like maybe I recorded that a little too low, so I'm going to hit the edit tab here. I'm going to zoom out to see all the bass. I'll highlight all the bass notes. And I'm going to pull them up with the transpose here, 1 octave. And then from here, I copy out the sequences and then build them as a song arrangement. So I'll go to this edit tab here. I'll hit copy sequence, right? And then I can label each sequence like introduction. Sequence 2 could be verse. Sequence 3 could be chorus. And then I can build these over time and then put them in a different order. So say I wanted to do an introduction with sequence 1, I could come to this track mute page here. I can mute out my drums, maybe start with, right? And then I can move on to sequence 2, and I could go to the track mute page again and pull in the drums with that. Right, this could be a whole nother section, and maybe we do the pianos, but for those pianos, maybe I want them a lower octave. I can transpose those, or I could do it on the grid. I'm going to transpose it here. So I can transpose those down. And then track mute and maybe something like. Right, so I'm just building different sequences with the sounds that I have, and then over time, pulling different sounds in and out. From there, I would use this menu button here and go to the song page. And now I have a list that I can start to arrange these different sequences. And I don't have to just use what I have there. I can actually go in each sequence and play different patterns, add different instruments. Maybe I wanted to do an arpeggiated, synth over the top for the chorus or something like that. And you're just building it in a song format. So it's an arranger mode essentially.
And can you like pan the individual elements from there?
Absolutely. So there's a full mix feature in here. So if you go to this channel mixer here, you have the different sounds here. So I can either adjust the volume, I can pan them left or right here. I can add effects to each separate part as well. So if for that choir I wanted to add some delay or something like that, I could go in and do that in the effects page here. Double tap, open up the effects. You have all the different effects there. If I wanted to do it for the different drum sounds as well, right? Because each program is being panned individually, but I could do each sound within the drums. So instead of channel mixer here, I would go to pad mixer for the drums. Then I have the different drum sounds here, and I could pan those individually as well. So if I wanted the clap to be a little off center and the hi-hats to kind of bounce back and forth, I could do that as well.
Is that the kind of thing you think you could do live, or do you think you'd be better off preparing something beforehand?
I'd say if you're skilled enough, you could definitely do both, right? A lot of people use this as a performance tool where they're live on stage. If you think of people like A-Rap Music, he opens up stadiums performing live on an MPC, and he does all of this live. But for myself personally, I'm more of a studio producer, so I'll use this as like the central hub for my studio production, and I'll take the time to mix everything down. Again, this is a studio in a box, right? It's a full-blown workstation. You can do everything here you would traditionally do with a computer and a DAW. Another advanced feature I didn't mention earlier is the ability to export stems. So I could take all of these sounds, and if I go back to that song page here, if we see this export button here, I can export it as a stereo wave, or I can separate the programs, literally hit export here, and it will separate every sound as a wave file. And if, say I'm more like the creative process of making the compositions as opposed to mixing down, I could then send those audio files out to a mixing engineer and have them mix and master it as well. But you can do all of that in the box as well.
That sounded awesome. Thank you so much. Is there anything else you want to touch on before we wrap up?
Another advanced feature that I neglected to mention was the ability to resample yourself. So sometimes I'll get creative block and, or I'll have a deadline that's just kind of tough to meet and I don't have a lot of time. I'll load up a composition that I made previously. I'll mute out the drums. Then I'll go to this sampler page here, and you can literally tell it to resample whatever you have. So instead of having to connect wires and come back into this, it just resamples from the internal sound. Then I can add effects like half speed to that or lo-fi, chop those sounds up and put them on pads and make a whole new composition within minutes. Another cool feature of the sampler page is you can actually clone other synthesizers with this.
Oh, cool.
So say you have a friend who has an old rack mount, keyboard or synthesizer or something like that, or you have gear that you only use a couple of sounds in and you're looking to get rid of it, you can come to this sampler tab and you can come to this keys icon. You take the MIDI out of this to the MIDI in of your other synthesizer. You take the audio out of that synthesizer to the audio in of this. You set your note range. So do I want to sample an octave? Do I want to sample the whole keyboard? You hit the do it button here. It sends the MIDI data out to your external synth, records the audio back in, and you've effectively cloned patches out of other synthesizers as well.
That's awesome. You got a ton of options there with synthesizers then.
Absolutely. To me, I call this thing the mothership, right? It runs my whole studio, have it set up. You can control external gear. So if you have MIDI gear, there are MIDI outs. If you have modular gear, you can control the modular gear with the CV gate outs, built-in Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. So if you wanted to connect this wirelessly to other gear with Ableton Link, you can pair them. It will tempo sync, it will transport lock. So I can be here doing drums, you can be on the other one playing synth sounds, and it will all, control wirelessly.
Thank you, John, for being here and showing us all the wonderful features. I feel like I learned a ton. If you want to check out the MPC X SE and other awesome Akai products, head on over to AmericanMusical.com.